Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. Tom Harrison wanted nothing but peace, a quiet life in his Texas cabin surrounded by the wilderness. But when a ruthless HOA set its sights on his land, peace turned to war. They tried to break him, to steal what was his. They even tried to put him behind bars, but they forgot one thing. Tom doesn't lose. Tom Harrison had spent the last 30 years in his cabin-style home, nestled deep in the Texan wilderness. A lifetime hunter and outdoorsman, he had always valued solitude, peace, and the freedom that came with owning land far away from the grip of suburban conformity. His home was a sturdy structure, built with his own hands and maintained with care. The property spanned several acres, complete with a shooting range, a well-stocked workshop, and an impressive collection of hunting rifles, each legally registered, polished, and properly stored. Tom had no family to speak of, no wife or children, just his land, his guns, and the serenity of the open sky. For decades, life had remained simple, but then came the HOA invasion. 5 years ago, an entire planned suburban community had sprouted on the land adjacent to his. Cookie-cutter houses, manicured lawns, and an iron-fisted homeowners association eager to enforce its will on anyone within reach. Tom had never been concerned. After all, his property had existed long before their prefab monstrosities, and he had never signed up to be a part of their rigid society. To him, the HOA was just a bureaucratic annoyance, something that had nothing to do with his self-sufficient way of life. But then, one crisp autumn evening, the peace was shattered by an unexpected knock at his door. Standing on his porch was Amanda Preston, a middle-aged woman with a razor-sharp bob, a crisp beige pantsuit, and an expression that screamed self-importance. She held a sleek tablet in one hand, the other resting on her hip with the confidence of someone used to getting her way. "Good evening, Mr. Harrison," she began with a rehearsed, syrupy sweetness. "I'm Amanda Preston, the president of the Oak Ridge HOA. I'm here to discuss some necessary improvements to your property." Tom remained still, arms crossed, his weathered face unreadable. He could already tell where this was going. "I'm not part of your HOA," he said flatly. Amanda smiled, the kind of tight, condescending smile people reserve for stubborn children. "Oh, but you see, our community has standards, and your property is, well," she gestured vaguely toward his land, as if words failed her. "Not exactly up to them." Tom followed her gaze to his fence, an old but sturdy wooden structure, then to his cabin, rustic and practical, not the sterile beige uniformity of her neighborhood. "It's my land, my house," he said, unimpressed. "Your rules don't apply here." Amanda's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "Mr. Harrison, let's not be difficult. Surely you can understand that your aesthetic is disrupting the harmony of the neighborhood. If we don't maintain a cohesive visual appeal, property values suffer." Tom fought the urge to laugh. "Then lower your property values and leave me out of it." Her nostrils flared, but she still attempted to maintain her composed demeanor. "I have a list of changes that need to be made, including repainting your fence to match the HOA's approved colors, removing any, unsightly objects from your yard, and ensuring your landscaping meets our guidelines. We expect compliance within 30 days. Tom stepped forward, his 6'2" frame towering over her. "You're standing on private property, lady. I don't follow HOA rules. I never signed anything. And I sure as hell won't be taking orders from some committee that thinks it owns the world." Amanda blinked, clearly not used to being dismissed so easily. "You'll find that resistance is not in your best interest," she warned, tapping at her tablet. "We'll be in touch." Tom simply nodded toward the gate. "You can see yourself out." As Amanda strutted away, her heels clicking sharply against the gravel, Tom sighed, already knowing this wouldn't be the last time he'd see her. And he was right. 3 days after Amanda's unwelcome visit, Tom had all but put the encounter out of his mind. He had dealt with pushy bureaucrats before, annoying but ultimately harmless. He figured she'd realize soon enough that he wasn't some spineless suburbanite and move on to terrorize someone else. But Amanda Preston was not the type to accept defeat. Late in the afternoon, just as the sun began dipping below the treetops, Tom was in his workshop cleaning his rifle when he heard voices outside. Deep, confident voices. Multiple. Frowning, he stepped onto his porch and immediately felt his blood pressure spike. Amanda had returned, but this time she wasn't alone. Two burly men in HOA-branded polo shirts stood beside her, each holding a bucket of beige paint and large industrial brushes. One of them was already prying open a lid, the acrid smell of fresh paint spilling into the evening air. Amanda, now wearing a smug little smile, gestured to the fence. "Since you won't comply willingly, Mr. Harrison, we've decided to take matters into our own hands. Consider this a community service. No need to thank us." Tom's jaw tightened. "Get off my property, now." Amanda sighed theatrically, turning to her goons. "See, this is exactly the kind of stubbornness that holds communities back." One of the men, a thick-necked brute with a tattoo peeking out from under his collar, dipped his brush into the bucket and slapped a long streak of beige onto Tom's fence. That was it. Tom had given them one warning. Wordlessly, he turned, stepped inside his house, and grabbed his shotgun. It was a beautiful piece, an old but well-maintained Remington 870, and it was loaded with rock salt rounds, perfect for situations exactly like this. By the time he stepped back outside, Amanda's enforcers had painted nearly 3 feet of his fence. They barely had time to register the click-clack of the pump action before, boom, the shot rang out like a cannon blast. The first salt round struck Tattoo Neck square in the thigh. He yelped in pain, dropping his brush as he stumbled backward, clutching his leg. The second guy took one look at his fallen comrade, then at Tom's cold, steady grip on the shotgun, and bolted, dropping his paint bucket as he ran like his life depended on it. Amanda, now pale as a ghost, took an unsteady step back, her perfectly manicured fingers gripping the handle of her designer purse like it was a life raft. "Are you insane?" she shrieked. "You shot him." Tom lowered the barrel slightly, but not completely. "No, ma'ams," he said calmly. "I gave a warning. You ignored it. In Texas, I have every right to defend my property from trespassers." Tattoo Neck was still on the ground, moaning in pain, but it was clear that he'd live. The shot hadn't broken skin, just left a hell of a sting. Amanda's breath came in furious, ragged gasps. She had not expected this. "You'll regret this," she spat. "You're going to jail for this, you crazy old bastard." Tom smirked, tilting his head toward the clearly visible "no trespassing" signs lining his fence. "Good luck with that." Amanda's eyes burned with hatred, but she knew she had lost. For now. Without another word, she turned and stormed off, heels digging into the dirt, while her remaining goon dragged his wounded friend toward their SUV. As they sped away, Tom stood motionless on his porch, shotgun still in hand, watching them retreat. He knew this wasn't over. Amanda Preston wasn't the type to let something like the law get in her way. This had just become a war. Tom had dealt with pissed-off trespassers before, poachers, drunks, and the occasional lost hiker with an attitude. But Amanda Preston was a whole new breed of stubborn. Most people, when faced with a shotgun blast, would take the hint and never show their faces again. But not Amanda. The very next morning, she was back at it. Not in person, not yet, but through a formal HOA complaint. Tom found the notice stuffed into his mailbox, printed on pristine letterhead, sealed with the association's official gold emblem. The letter accused him of unkempt landscaping, his wild natural forest, failure to comply with community aesthetic standards, his rustic cabin that predated the HOA by 3 decades, creating a hazardous environment for neighbors, aka shooting a trespasser with salt. It concluded with a fine of $5,000 and a warning that continued violations could result in legal action. Tom laughed, out loud. Then, just to be thorough, he fed the letter into his wood stove and watched it burn. By the end of the week, the harassment had reached a whole new level. First came the noise complaints. HOA board members, Amanda's loyal lapdogs, started calling the sheriff's department at all hours of the day, claiming they heard illegal gunfire coming from his property. Each time a deputy arrived, and each time they found nothing illegal. Then came the bogus city inspections. Health officials showed up to investigate reports that Tom was hoarding garbage and breeding wild animals. Code enforcement officers arrived, demanding access to check for structural violations. Each time, Tom met them at the gate with his property deed and a firm, "No, sir, you will not be stepping foot on my land." He knew exactly who was behind it. Amanda had gone nuclear. so Tom decided it was time to lawyer up. That evening, he picked up the phone and dialed Mark Spencer, an old friend and damn good lawyer. "Let me guess," Mark said as soon as he answered. "HOA trouble." "Bingo." Tom grunted. "They're pulling every trick in the book. Fines, complaints, fake inspections. I need to start playing offense." "Good. First step, document everything. Video, audio, written records, every single interaction. They'll slip up eventually, and when they do, we'll nail 'em." Tom liked the sound of that. From that moment on, he made it a habit. The second Amanda Preston stepped onto his property line, he reached into his pocket and clicked on his digital recorder. It became a game. Whenever she showed up, spouting off about community standards or the good of the neighborhood, he'd just listen, nod, and let her dig her own grave. Amanda, so full of herself, never noticed. She was too busy plotting her next move, and Tom knew the worst was yet to come. Tom had expected Amanda to keep up her petty harassment campaign. More fines, more bogus complaints, maybe even another attempt to repaint his fence under cover of night. What he hadn't expected was for her to go full-blown criminal. It started on a quiet Tuesday morning. Tom was finishing his coffee when he heard the roar of diesel engines outside. Stepping onto his porch, he froze. A fleet of work trucks had rolled onto his land. A full construction crew, complete with men in hard hats, was unloading equipment, measuring tape already stretched across his front yard. One guy was revving up a chainsaw, eyeing one of his oldest oak trees. And standing in the middle of it all, arms crossed in triumph, was Amanda Preston. "What the hell is this?" Tom called out, already feeling his blood pressure spike. Amanda turned, beaming. "Good morning, Mr. Harrison. We're here to make some much-needed improvements. Your property is now officially under HOA jurisdiction." Tom's jaw clenched, so this was it. "The hell it is," he growled, stepping forward. "You're trespassing, and so is your crew. Pack it up and get off my land before I call the sheriff." Amanda sighed dramatically, like he was being difficult on purpose. "Oh, Mr. Harrison, I knew you'd be resistant, so I came prepared." With an infuriatingly smug expression, she pulled a thick legal document from her folder and held it out. "Here's the official paperwork," she said sweetly. "Your home was added to our HOA last month. All legal, all binding." Tom snatched the document and scanned it. It was fake. A forged deed modification, complete with a fraudulent homeowner's signature, his name, but not his handwriting. Amanda hadn't just overstepped her authority. She had gone full-on criminal. He looked up at her, eyes dark with fury. "You actually think this will hold up in court?" Amanda chuckled. "Oh, but Mr. Harrison, do you really want to test that? Because while we're standing here arguing, my crew is making some much-needed changes." She turned and gestured to her workers. Two guys were already digging up his lawn to install a community-approved irrigation system. Another was unloading HOA-approved fencing materials, identical to the soulless beige barriers surrounding every house in her development. And the guy with the chainsaw. He was walking toward Tom's favorite oak tree. That's when Tom snapped. Tom pulled out his phone. "Sheriff's office." The dispatcher answered. "This is Tom Harrison. I have an armed trespassing situation on my property. HOA goons, fake documents, and a crew actively destroying my land. Send deputies, now." Amanda's smirk faltered. "Oh, Tom," she purred, still trying to sound in control. "You might want to reconsider. You see, I filed a police report this morning." Tom raised an eyebrow. "That so?" "Yes. The sheriff's office already has a complaint about you regarding illegal weapons storage." Tom stilled. Amanda grinned. "They're probably already en route to your house, ready to arrest you. Now, if you'd like to avoid any complications, we can make a deal. You comply with HOA regulations, and this little legal misunderstanding goes away." For the first time since this insane war had started, Tom felt a moment of genuine uncertainty. If the cops raided his home looking for illegal weapons, even though everything was properly registered, who knew what kind of excuse they might use to confiscate them? He could see it now. Amanda standing on his porch, smiling for the local news, as the sheriff hauled him off for safety violations. But then, he remembered the dictaphone. He reached into his pocket and hit play. Amanda's own voice crackled through the tiny speaker. "If you'd like to avoid any complications, we can make a deal. You comply with HOA regulations, and this little legal misunderstanding goes away." Amanda's smug expression shattered. She lunged for the recorder, but Tom stepped back. "Oops," he said dryly. "Didn't think that one through, did you?" Before she could recover, they both heard the distant wail of sirens. The sheriff's deputies had arrived, and Amanda Preston was about to realize she had made a colossal mistake. The courtroom was packed. The tension was so thick it could be cut with a knife. On one side sat Tom Harrison, calm and collected, his lawyer, Mark Spencer, at his side. Across the aisle, Amanda Preston, dressed in a stiff beige blazer, her face carefully composed but betraying a flicker of nervousness. The judge, a no-nonsense Texan with steel gray hair and a reputation for hating frivolous lawsuits, banged his gavel. "Let's get this circus started," he muttered, rubbing his temples. The HOA versus Tom Harrison case had already made headlines. A homeowners association president accused of forging property documents and a private landowner allegedly opening fire on community officials. The media was eating it up. Amanda's lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit, stood first. "Your Honor, we are dealing with a dangerous, unstable man," he began, throwing a dramatic glance at Tom. "Mr. Harrison shot an unarmed HOA worker in broad daylight. His obsession with firearms and aggressive demeanor prove that he is a threat to this community. We are requesting that he be held legally accountable for this act of violence and that his weapons be seized to prevent further harm." A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. Tom remained still, his face unreadable. "But Mark Spencer," he smirked. "Let's talk about this so-called act of violence, shall we?" Mark said smoothly, standing and buttoning his jacket. "Mr. Harrison did indeed fire a weapon, but let's be clear about what happened." He turned toward the jury. Mr. Harrison was standing on his own land when 3 individuals trespassed onto his property, one of whom, I remind you, was wielding a bucket of paint like a weapon against his fence. After repeatedly warning them to leave, Mr. Harrison used a legal, non-lethal defense round, rock salt, to ward off the trespassers. Texas law is clear. A property owner has the right to use reasonable force to protect his land from intruders. Mark let the words hang in the air before dramatically pulling out a thick leather-bound book and placing it on the judge's bench. "Your Honor, I am citing Texas Penal Code, Section 9.41 and 9.42, which explicitly state that a homeowner may use force, including deadly force, to protect their property from unlawful trespassers, vandalism, and destruction of property. Given that Mr. Harrison didn't even use deadly force, I'd say he showed remarkable restraint." The judge flipped through the law book, nodded, and looked at Amanda's lawyer. "Counselor, did your client fail to mention that her employees were trespassing when they got shot?" Amanda's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. We contend that it was a misunderstanding, Your Honor. Ms. Preston was simply trying to help Mr. Harrison conform to community standards by forging legal documents." Mark cut in, his voice sharp. Amanda's jaw clenched. "Objection," her lawyer snapped. "Overruled," the judge said flatly. Mark took a slow breath and delivered the next blow. "Your Honor, my client isn't the criminal here. Ms. Preston, on the other hand, falsified legal documents, attempted to illegally annex my client's land, and threatened him with false police reports in an attempt to coerce compliance. I have recorded evidence of her stating, and I quote, 'If you'd like to avoid any of these complications, we can make a deal.'" He held up a small digital recorder. Amanda's face drained of color. "Play the tape," the judge ordered. Mark pressed play. The entire courtroom listened in silence as Amanda's voice, once so smug and self-assured, echoed through the speakers. "If you'd like to avoid any complications, we can make a deal. You comply with HOA regulations, and this little legal misunderstanding goes away." The prosecutor immediately stood. "Your Honor, we move to enter this as evidence of criminal coercion and fraud." Amanda shot to her feet. "I was just trying to help the community," she shrieked. The judge didn't even look up as he banged the gavel. "Sit down." Amanda collapsed into her chair, shaking. Then came the final nail in the coffin. A handwriting expert took the stand, holding the forged deed modification Amanda had tried to pass off as real. Your Honor, after careful analysis, it is clear that the signature on this document was forged. Furthermore, there are several inconsistencies in the notary stamp which strongly suggests deliberate fraud. The jury exchanged looks. The judge leaned forward. Ms. Preston, you have 5 seconds to explain why I shouldn't have you arrested right now. Amanda opened her mouth, then closed it. There was no way out. After less than an hour of deliberation, the jury returned with the verdict. Tom was cleared of all charges. Amanda was found guilty of fraud, falsification of legal documents, coercion, and trespassing. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison. The moment the sentence was read, Amanda broke down. "You can't do this. I was trying to help. It was for the good of the community." The bailiffs grabbed her by the arms. "Get your hands off me. You're making a mistake. I built that HOA. I made it what it is." She kicked and screamed as she was dragged away, her shrill voice echoing through the courtroom. Tom watched her go, arms crossed. She had tried to destroy his life, steal his land, ruin his reputation. Now, she was going to rot in a prison cell. The judge turned to Tom. "Mr. Harrison, I apologize for the ridiculousness of this case. You're free to go. And might I suggest a nice glass of whiskey when you get home?" Tom chuckled, tipping his hat. "Much appreciated, Your Honor." As he stepped out into the sunlight, he took a deep breath of freedom. It was finally over. Amanda Preston was finished. The holding cell was cold, sterile, and buzzing with a faint flickering light overhead. Amanda Preston sat on the metal bench, her hands cuffed in front of her, her once perfect posture now slumped. The expensive beige blazer she had worn to court was wrinkled, her hair disheveled, and her eyes, those sharp, condescending eyes, were now filled with pure, seething hatred. The door opened with a loud clang, and Amanda looked up. Tom Harrison stepped inside, hands in his pockets, his face calm as ever. "Come to gloat?" Amanda sneered, her voice dripping with venom. "Just came to say goodbye," Tom said simply, leaning against the wall. Amanda laughed bitterly. "You think this is over, old man? You think I'm just going to sit in a cell and let you win?" She leaned forward, her voice lowering into a dangerous whisper. "You don't get it, do you? I built that HOA. I ran that neighborhood. I had power. You took everything from me. But mark my words, Harrison, this isn't over." Tom didn't react. He just watched her, his gaze steady, patient. Amanda smirked. "You may have won this round, but you're not safe. Not really. You think prison is going to stop me? I still have friends, connections. You never know when someone might come knocking at your door, or when you might have a little accident out there in the woods. And the best part? It won't even be me who does it." She sat back, watching him carefully, waiting for a reaction. Tom scratched his chin. "Huh," he muttered. "That's interesting." Amanda narrowed her eyes. Tom reached into his pocket and pulled out his dictaphone. Click. Amanda's own voice crackled through the speaker. "You may have won this round, but you're not safe. Not really. You think prison is going to stop me? I still have friends, connections. You never know when someone might come knocking at your door, or when you might have a little accident out there in the woods. And the best part? It won't even be me who does it." Amanda's face drained of all color. Tom smiled. "Boy, am I glad I made a habit of recording every conversation with you." Amanda lunged forward, yanking against her cuffs. "You son of a—" Before she could finish, the guard stepped inside. "That's enough, Preston. Time to go." Amanda tried to twist away, but the guard hauled her up by the arm and dragged her toward the door. She thrashed, eyes wild. "Harrison, you think this changes anything? You think this makes you safe? The heavy steel door slammed shut, cutting off her screams. Tom exhaled. Then he pocketed the dictaphone and walked out. The next morning, the recording was sitting on Sheriff Dalton's desk. By noon, Amanda Preston had new charges added to her case: criminal threats, conspiracy to commit harm. Her sentence was increased by another 3 years. That evening, as Tom sat on his porch watching the Texas sun dip below the horizon, he thought about Amanda's last words. "You're not safe." Tom chuckled, shaking his head. She really thought he'd be afraid. She really thought she had power. Amanda Preston was gone. And the war was finally over. The Texas sun hung low in the sky, flooding Tom Harrison's land with a golden glow. The air smelled of pine trees and fresh earth, and the only sounds were the distant cries of birds and the faint rustle of leaves in the evening wind. This was the world Tom had always cherished, the world he had fought to protect. He was sitting on the porch of his house with his shoes on the railing and a cold beer in his hand. A freshly cleaned shotgun lay next to him. The war with Amanda Preston and her damn HOA is finally over. Amanda was put behind bars for the foreseeable future, and with her departure, the HOA collapsed. After her conviction, residents of Oak Ridge Estates opposed the association. Board members resigned en masse, homeowners sued for fraudulent payments and fines, and after a few weeks, the entire HOA was dissolved. No one wanted to be part of an organization that tried to steal a person's house and nearly destroyed an entire neighborhood. Tom won, and yet... A car engine rumbled in the distance. Tom squinted, watching as a shiny black pickup truck pulled up to his fence. A young man, probably in his mid-30s, got out of it. He approached the porch cautiously, keeping his hands in his pockets. "Mr. Harrison." Tom took a slow sip of his beer. "It's me." The man nodded. "I just bought one of the houses in Oak Ridge Estates. I've heard a lot about what happened to the HOA and Amanda Preston." Tom raised an eyebrow. "Yes? And?" The man hesitated, then grinned. "I just wanted to say that it was a real battle. You stood up when most people would have given in. There aren't many people like you left, Mr. Harrison." Tom grinned, lifting his beer mug slightly in greeting. "I appreciate that, son." The man hesitated again, looking around at the ground, the trees, the old but sturdy hut that was in the middle of such chaos. "Do you ever worry? Do you know that someone else will try to pull off the same trick?" Tom's grin widened. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a dictaphone, and pressed it twice. "No way." The young man laughed, shaking his head. "Well, I would say that you deserve peace. Take care of yourself, Mr. Harrison." As the truck pulled away, Tom leaned back in his chair, listening to the crickets begin their evening symphony. For the first time in a long time, he knew that no one would bother him anymore. Sighing contentedly, he took another sip of beer, allowing the world to finally calm down around him. And then he thought that this was the best hunt of his life.